Hello, basketball fans. Welcome back to another episode of Baseline to Baseline. As always, you're joined by Ian and Owen. But today we got a special guest on, Andrew Goodman from Brew Hoop. Brew Hoop. He writes for them. They're from SB Nation. So we don't know. We had on John Voida last week from. He also writes on SB Nation, but on the Sun side. So it works out great to have Andrew on this week. So Andrew, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. I just want to thank you guys once more for having me on your show. And it's cool. You guys get a little bit of taste of both worlds, interviewing both SB Nation sites. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to, do that. And being a Canadian basketball podcast, it's always nice to have our neighbors up below us here to come and join us on. So it's great. Andrew, we'll get a little bit about you first here. So just tell us a little bit about what you do. So how long have you been writing for Brew Hoop for?
Yeah, so this is I started writing for Brew Hoop when Coach Budenholzer took over for the Bucks head coach, and I believe this is now year 3. So these 3 years have gone by really fast. But my sports blogging journey really got started in high school. I wrote for Fansided, a UCLA blog, doing football, basketball. Did that for a few years, and then freshman year of college, I started writing for Cream City Central, which is like a fan pop culture Milwaukee sports blog. They dabble in a little bit of everything: music, pop culture, and sports. I was a Bucks contributor for them. Did that for about a year and a half, and then I relentlessly asked Mitchell and Adam, our editors at Brew Hoop, I believe I asked them 2 seasons in a row if they had any spots for contributors, and the first 2 times I got shot down that they already had their spaces filled up, but I kept trying, and third time's a charm. And ever since they accepted me 3 years ago, here we are in the finals. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, no kidding. And Fansided is a interesting website. I wrote a little bit on the Raptors blog there for Fansided for a little bit as well.
Yes.
So it's a cool website. So are you I assume you're a Bucks fan as well? Is that you a big fan?
Absolutely. So I was actually born and raised in Los Angeles, and everyone's like, well, you're from LA. Why the heck are you a Bucks fan? So in the prior ownership, I did have some distant family. So growing up, I was raised a Bucks fan. We would fly out to Milwaukee, see some games, and I'm telling you, this is when they had Charlie Villanueva, and they were winning like 20 games a season. They had Michael Redd, who was a walking bucket, as we know. And regardless of what their record was, I just really, really enjoyed watching the Bucks and just basketball overall. But what sealed the deal is, I believe I was 10 years old at the time, after going to Milwaukee to watch a Cavs Bucks game, like random regular season game in March. Came back home, and there was a huge box of just Bucks goodies, like autographed basketball, some memorabilia, T-shirts, headband, sweatshirts, all that good stuff. So that really helped cement it. And I've stuck with the Bucks through thick and thin, like a lot of people. And seeing them in the finals is something that I would have thought would never happen in my lifetime. And now I'm living in Phoenix, and what are the odds that they're playing in the finals, A, and B, playing the Suns in the city that I live? It's really feels like it's come all full circle.
Yeah, that game against Cleveland, was that when LeBron would have been there, right?
Yep, LeBron, yeah. Nice. Delonte West, Anderson Varejao was in his prime.
Nice. That's a heck of a team. I can't believe he took that team to the finals, but
I know, right? It's crazy. What can he do at this point?
Absolutely. So I also noticed that you were a journalism alumni from Arizona State University. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I just graduated. I was on what they call the 6-year plan, so it took me a little extra, but I just graduated with my bachelor's degree in communication from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. So let's get into a little bit of Bucks talk here. Owen, you haven't got to ask a question yet. I'll pass it off to you, man.
All right. So first thing I want to ask is, obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He has been an amazing player in this playoff run. He's a 2-time MVP, and he's led this Bucks to great records before. Were you excited when they drafted him originally?
I'm not going to lie. I honestly had absolutely no idea who the heck he was. Going into the draft, it was funny. I actually wanted the Bucks to take Shabazz Muhammad from UCLA at the time, who I thought was going to be a superstar, and we know how that turned out. It's funny, he was actually had a tenure with the Bucks, and I wanted them to draft Shane Larkin too. But when they drafted Giannis, I was like, I really don't know anything about him to really jump to conclusions and say like, oh, this guy's going to be a bust. And I know a lot of people were saying that, which is a fair assumption, but I think this really speaks to the testament of Giannis being just one of the best, hardest working players in basketball, because I don't think many people outside of Milwaukee really knew, unless like you're a huge NBA draft nerd, which I'm not. I had no idea who Giannis was, like I said, but just I feel like the amount of people who knew about Giannis was very small. But when you saw those little highlight clips of him playing in like dingy gyms, the potential there was evident. You have this guy who at the time, I believe he was 6'10", still growing. He possessed some crazy ball handling skills. His shot at the time looked pretty pure, but there was some room for improvement. But like I said, the potential after you saw these videos was evident.
All right, yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that I had no idea who he was. Like I was quite surprised that that's who they took, but I was just curious. Like being a Bucks fan, like when we interviewed John last week,
Mhm.
he was like all for Devin Booker in the draft, and
Right.
he was all for DeAndre Ayton in the draft. So I was just curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, and I think it would have been different if Giannis played in the States and went to a blue blood school like Duke, North Carolina, or UCLA, USC. But everyone has their own journey, and like I said, just seeing the overall maturation of Giannis since they first drafted him it's really been a sight to behold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Giannis is there really wasn't like that much tape on him like before he
Mhm.
came to the States and started playing Milwaukee. Like I remember in the draft, like they were playing tape about him and it was really grainy, like it wasn't
Yep.
great. So it's tough to put a highlight reel together when you're from a country that, I mean, they don't produce a whole lot of NBA
Mhm.
superstars. So that's interesting that they still like saw something in him, even though that's what scouts are for, I guess. But I remember reading something about Giannis, where it was kind of a culture shock, like for him when he came over here, like things that they do over in Greece in basketball, they don't do in the United States. Like, I can't remember her name. She was on the Bill Simmons podcast, and they were talking about Giannis, and she said that like the Bucks had to tell Giannis, like, hey, Giannis, like we don't cry after basketball games here in North America. Like, I know that might be something normal you do in Greece, but I thought that was an interesting little thing. I'm sure that was hard for him to adapt over time.
For sure. And, there ever since his rookie year, there have been these crazy stories. I know at the time, Larry Sanders, when Giannis was a rookie, took him under his wing. Larry Sanders got Giannis a pair of these Gucci loafers, and Giannis he just thought they were just like a pair of tennis shoes. He had no idea like the whole Gucci brand and all that. And I remember when Caron Butler was also on the Bucks for Giannis's rookie season, he threw away some sneakers after practice, and Giannis went into the dumpster and started diving for him. There's also a story where he was wiring his game check back home to Greece for his family, and he didn't have a ride. So he ended up, I believe this was on a game day as well. So he went from the Western Union Bank, and he was running to the Bradley Center, and just some random nice people offered to give him a ride, and it turns out it's Giannis. Like just a really, really humble kid who comes from great beginnings. Like I really firmly believe that the storyline of Giannis it's so great for the NBA.
Sounds like a Disney movie already.
Right.
um, with Giannis, when I think he re-signed last year or last summer. Yeah, it was last summer he re-signed.
Mm.
Were you surprised by that? Because I know there's a lot of rumors saying like, oh, Milwaukee, um, they can't get past Eastern Conference
Mhm.
Finals. Like they're not gonna be able to do it. Giannis is gonna want to go play somewhere else. He's got no hope left for this team. Were you surprised when he re-signed?
I think there definitely was some fear in me for sure, because like you said, the Bucks had underachieved the 2 years prior, falling short in the Eastern Conference Finals, and of course in the bubble, Giannis gets hurt, and then they pretty much get the gentleman sweep of the Miami Heat. And I think that actually put a lot of pressure on General Manager John Horst and the ownership, which turned out to be a great thing. I believe if they didn't go out and make a move for Drew Holiday and really, show Giannis that they're all in, and there was some leaked info coming out that Giannis basically told the Bucks FO like, "Hey, this is who I want, A, B, and C. Like, go get them." So they're definitely like a part of me was scared, because you look at a city like Milwaukee, small market. How can they match up against a Miami, a Brooklyn, Los Angeles? So I believe that fear is normal just because a lot of these stars and all these American stars, they love to, jump ship and, form a super team to win, which I do have a problem with, but at the same time, winning a ring, I really don't have a problem. Any way you win a ring, it goes down as a ring in my book. But I believe that going out and really showing Giannis that they mean business, mortgaging their future on Drew Holiday, which I'm okay with, trading those draft picks. It showed Giannis that A, they listen to him, and B, that, they mean business. And, it meant a lot this is what I wanted Giannis to do, years prior. I wanted him to go to the front office and be like, hey, we need upgrades on our roster. This is who I want you to go after. And, for him to seemingly do that, it, really kind of took him up to a next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially in a place where it might not be easy to, to like try and keep big stars like Giannis. Like you got teams like the Lakers and the Clippers and
Right.
all those marquee teams where Giannis could easily go to. But
Mhm.
obviously he's very loyal to Milwaukee, which is great for Bucks fans to know that he's loyal, even though it took a few things to keep him around. But at least
Right.
you know that he is loyal.
And that's the big thing, was the loyalty. Giannis wanted to repay Milwaukee's loyalty for taking a chance on him in the draft. Granted, totally lucked into that at pick number 15. I mean, no one could have predicted his ascension to this level of greatness. But again, this speaks to the overall character of Giannis. He knows that the Bucks took a chance on him, and he's going to take a chance on them. So it was a two-way street. It's a really good feel-good story for sure.
And Drew Holiday is probably the best point guard he's played with too. So that's probably
That
helps
might
him
be an
out.
understatement. This guy's played with Kendall Marshall, Brandon Knight, who I actually did enjoy Brandon Knight when he was on the Bucks. Michael Carter Williams, don't even get me started on him. So he's definitely Giannis has been through the ringer. He's seen a lot of losses in his days.
Yeah, it's nice to see him play with high quality point guard. I've always been a fan of Drew Holiday. One thing I want to ask you just before I pass it off to Owen again here. So when they drafted Giannis, obviously they probably didn't quite know what they were getting, but obviously they saw something in him. I thought that was really like a big start to the NBA really looking more into European or just like countries outside of North America. Really, like you saw like I'm a Raptors fan, so I use a Raptors reference here. When they got Siakam, like nobody really knew quite what they were going to be getting with him, but he ended up blowing up in the 2019 season. This season wasn't great, but he's really formed out to be a great player. It seems like teams should probably be looking. I mean, I'm sure they have, like you got guys like Dirk Nowitzki in the past, but I think it really opened the door for a lot of players outside of North America to really come to the NBA. Like I want to ask your thoughts on it, but what do you think about the NBA expanding more outside of North America? Do you think there's going to be a lot more growth in that direction?
Oh, I love it. Just overall for the growth of the sport, it's great. And I love just seeing some of these guys drafted from overseas, just hearing about their story and how they grew up. And, overall, just seeing how different the game of basketball is overseas. There's a lot of differences, and there's also a lot of similarities. And I believe for players coming over from Europe, yeah, they'll have the experience, playing professionally, because, the collegiate basketball in Europe really isn't a thing. I think it does give them an advantage, but at the same time, it also serves as sort of like a wake-up call when they come to the league. They're playing these guys that, go attend universities like Duke, North Carolina, some really big blue bloods, excuse me. And they played AAU basketball growing up. So I just love seeing overall the game of basketball in the NBA expanding. They have the basketball without borders, and that's really what it's all about. It's all about inclusion and just really diversifying the league.
Yeah, and you got, of course, guys like Luka and Joel Embiid as well.
Of course.
We're big international players. Anyways, Owen, I'll pass it off to you again here.
All right. So going back to Giannis, I guess. Big Giannis fan apparently, but so I've seen a lot of criticism for Giannis these past two playoff years just because he hasn't been able to really lead his team. And I've seen some comparisons to Scottie Pippen, to where he's a great number two, but he can't be the number one. I want to know, what are your thoughts on that?
So I'll answer your first part of the question about his previous playoff struggles and the criticism he's gotten. And I believe the criticism that Giannis has gotten the last few postseasons is totally granted. The last few postseasons we've seen Giannis against, Toronto, like he was never able to get over. Toronto, Kawhi Leonard shut him down. Fred VanVleet went supernova. That wasn't good. And obviously the Miami Heat, I believe both those teams employed basically the same strategy of forming a wall, which at the time was very effective because Giannis was not very good at passing out of double teams. When he was double teamed, he would get flummoxed, wouldn't know what to do, would, force his pass where there wasn't anything. And that's the thing is Giannis, now it looks like he's more patient, makes a ton of better reads off double teams, makes more accurate passes. I love how they're using him as a roll man. So this season, we're kind of seeing that maturation overall of Giannis. And I believe, man, people are still saying that Giannis has no bag and all that stuff. And it's just because he's not scoring his points like people want to see. They want to see, like how many times are you going to dribble between your legs like Kyrie Irving, take a step back 3-pointer. That's not who Giannis is. Giannis, as we've seen, is one of the most, if not the most unstoppable players in the paint. Why would he shoot a jumper if he can just get a dunk or layup every time, or he gets fouled, which is proving to be the only way to stop him. But overall, when you're looking at the Scottie Pippen aspect and being number 2, but not good enough to be number 1, I think that kind of goes out the window now. Giannis this season now has a better supporting cast than he did in the last 2 seasons. And we're seeing Giannis, I mean, these last 2 games, what was it, games 2 and games 3, he's just elevating his game. Game 1, he was good too because, when he had that really scary knee injury against the Hawks, we were thinking like, man, this guy's blew out his ACL, he's done. And now he's in the finals. And he's really been in 2 out of 3. We can make the argument for 3 that he's been the best player on the floor for all 3 games of the finals. So I believe that question would be valid the last 2 seasons, how we saw the Bucks go out. But I believe how we're seeing Giannis overall just to elevate his game in the finals. I don't believe that question really has any merit to it. Because like I said, 41 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists in a must-win season on the line game 3. Also had 20 points in the third quarter of game 2. Just, I wanted Giannis to, obviously we all wanted him to step up. And I thought that him stepping up at the finals was definitely not out of the question. But to this regard, what we're seeing from Giannis in the finals is historic.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I agree. Like, I think this like the way he's been playing, especially in game 3, was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that was like he joined the elite company of I don't remember who else, but I know Shaquille O'Neal with like back-to-back 40-point doubles.
Yeah, it was just Shaq. ESPN messed that graphic. They said it was Shaq and LeBron, but it was just Shaq, right. So he just joined Shaq.
Yes, I did see that too. LeBron did not do that back-to-back. But yeah, so I mean, I agree. Like, I think Giannis could be number 1. Sorry, can I ask another question, Ian? Do you mind?
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Do you think Middleton can be the number 2?
That's the more tantalizing question, is because Kris Middleton is a great all-around basketball player. They're paying him to be a number 2. You can make the option that he's being paid to even be a number 1, but it's all about fit with the Milwaukee Bucks. And he and Giannis, Kris Middleton's first season in a Bucks uniform was Giannis's rookie season, and I've read some stories about how Giannis and Kris Middleton, they used to go out in practice because they were fighting for a roster spot at the time, and they really pushed each other to become great. And seeing them lead the Bucks in the finals is something, like I said, I would have never expected. My only issue here with Kris Middleton is a little bit, for lack of better words, is consistency. Because when Kris Middleton is on, like, he's really on. But when Kris Middleton is off, his low is really low. And we saw that in game 2, really. Game 1 of the finals, I thought Kris Middleton had a great game. He was one of the reasons why the Bucks, were sort of in the fight. Really didn't refuse to go away. But then he followed that up. Game 2 was a big stinker from him and Drew Holiday. Game 3, he played a little better, 18 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. I thought he was much better on the defensive end in game 3 than offensively. But for me, my issue with Kris Middleton, like I said, is the consistency. But if Giannis is going to be playing at this high of a level, I for sure think that Kris Middleton could be a number 2 on a championship contending team. And you can also make the argument that Drew Holiday is really the number 2 on this team as well.
Right. I mean, Drew Holiday has definitely had his struggles. But I mean, he has like he has that offensive potential. Like obviously we know what he brings defensively. He's one of the best defensive guards in the league. And like defensively, that starting lineup is terrifying because like every single one of those starters is a plus defender.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said about Drew Holiday on the defensive end. I just want to touch on him a little bit. You know, what's really sad about Drew Holiday in this finals is I thought he's been fantastic at distributing the basketball and setting up others. It's really up to his teammates to be hitting the shots. And if, you know, if his teammates aren't hitting the shots, then his numbers aren't going to look that great. My biggest disappointment with Drew, though, is I've seen him just blow countless layups this finals. I don't know what's going on, but he's getting to the rim, can't finish. This has really been an overall problem for most of the Bucks roster outside of Giannis, even though we have seen Giannis miss some bunnies. But Drew Holiday, he's getting there, but he's not finishing. Also, I think he forces the issues at time offensively. Really, when he's the primary ball handler, when Giannis is on the floor, we see Drew Holiday kind of revert back into, you know, taking step backs or driving to the basket, which is great, but he'll drive to the basket with, you know, a defender draped all over him. But really encouraged, A, by how he's setting his teammates up regardless of the Bucks being down 2-1. I thought that's been consistent throughout. But B, also his defensive effort, like you mentioned. You know, after game 1, it was clear that the Bucks had some adjustments to make on Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and, you know, some of the rest of the Suns' offensive attack. So they really decided to, you know, what they should have done at the beginning, but better late than never, as I say, is putting Drew Holiday on Chris Paul. Chris Paul has, I believe it's 10 turnovers the last 2 games, which for Chris Paul, he's one of the best at taking care of the basketball throughout his entire career. So really putting Drew Holiday on Chris Paul, I think, has kind of changed the balance of the series just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, once you put like, because Chris Paul is the primary ball handler for Phoenix, like he'll run the play, he'll run the offense. So if you can cut off the offense at its source, obviously that'll take away opportunities for Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. So I mean, it makes sense to me to put Drew Holiday on him, but the Bucks always seem to have, like, I know the commentators for the channel, like I was watching, like said this, they always seem to have like a feel out kind of game.
Yeah, that's so from a Bucks perspective, that's very annoying. But game 1 was definitely that feeler game where you're just going in, you're gonna go in with your strategy, but it's after the game you're gonna come out with a totally different strategy for game 2, and that's what we saw in game 1. Was that the Bucks, they ran their drop coverage that was getting burned. Granted, Phoenix definitely hit a ton of tough shots that even when the Bucks did defend well, they still made it. Also, I thought the Bucks, they were switching, which they can switch. They have the guys on their roster to do so. Obviously, missing Dante DiVincenzo is huge. He's not going to tilt the series in the Bucks' favor, but you know, he's one of the more athletic guards in the game. Great defender, can shoot the ball. But my biggest problem after game 1 was how soft the Bucks were handling the switching. You know, they saw DeAndre Ayton or Jay Crowder, any Phoenix big, come set a screen, and they would, you know, just stick their hand out. They wouldn't get through that screen strong enough, so it just led to Phoenix getting so many different avenues to kill the Bucks, and that's what we saw the Bucks change. Sort of game 2, it didn't really work out in their favor, but game 3, I thought the Bucks did a much better job at sort of swarming the ball, making Phoenix catch the ball in places where they're not comfortable, and also taking away that corner 3 was huge in game 3. Games 1 and game 2, Phoenix had a ton of makes and attempts from the corner, and that's where they've been successful all season. And the Bucks, on the other hand, they give up a ton of corner 3. So to see them, I believe they only gave up 2 or 3 attempts total in game 3 from the corner. That was very encouraging, very underrated aspect to be encouraged about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's huge because, I mean, corner 3s are, I think, the highest statistical 3-point shot.
Especially when you're dealing with guys like Mikal Bridges too. You know, he struggled in the Western Conference Finals, but at this stage, you leave a guy open, they're in the NBA, they're going to make it more times than not.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to mention is I think we're bound at some point here to get a Kris Middleton 40-point game, random Kris Middleton 40-point game, I think. So, and that's going to be bad news for Phoenix when it does happen, because Giannis will probably be on still when that does happen. So it always seems to be one in the series where Kris Middleton will just go off.
Right, and Kris Middleton, he's had a decent playoff stretch. I'm not going to say he's been great. He definitely helped the Bucks win a few games. The one against Brooklyn in game 7, he really helped them in overtime with that shot over Bruce Brown. And then he won 2 games basically on his own with the help of Drew Holiday, of course. Against the Hawks, we saw him take over I believe that was the third quarter of game 6 and the fourth quarter of I believe that was game 3. So Kris Middleton definitely has had his moments, but overall, it's so rare for Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday to all play well simultaneously, and that's what's so frustrating is because we know what they're all capable of doing offensively and defensively. But when you have Giannis, if you have Giannis and Middleton, playing well, odds are that Drew Holiday is probably going to have a rough time shooting the ball. If it's, Drew Holiday and Giannis, we're going to have a game where Kris Middleton is struggling. So it was nice to see some balanced effort, 41 from Giannis, 21 from Drew, 18 from Middleton for sure. But, all I want, I definitely want that Kris Middleton 40 piece. But man, I just want them all three clicking at the same time. That'd be a sight to see.
Right. And going back to your when we were talking about Giannis, you mentioned that you think Giannis should kind of just stick to what he's good at, and that's not saying he doesn't need to pull out for jumpers and stuff. What happens? What do you think? What do you think will happen? Because when I'm just going to go back to 2019 when they were playing Toronto, Kawhi was playing defense on him, and he really they played the boxed one defense. They really contained him, especially with Kawhi on him. What do you think is going to happen when when Giannis runs into a player like that again, where he can really shut him down and prevent him from getting to the paint? Because as you said, he is one of the most dominant players in the game today, and he can get to the paint whenever he wants to. But there are those rare defenders that will shut him down, and at some point he's going to run into one of those guys again in the playoffs. So what do you think that jumper is something that he needs to add to his game, or do you think he should just kind of stick to what he knows?
When we're talking about Giannis and jumpers, what I want to see him develop is that free throw line lower, little mid-range jumper, backing down, fade away in the paint. I believe that if Giannis can really fully unlock that, and if we're being honest, that shot is going to be there for him every time. I like that he has the confidence to shoot it from deep. Like he said, he's going to airball some free throws, airball some threes. What I really like about him is he still has the confidence. He doesn't get defeated as like someone like Ben Simmons who, airballs a free throw, airballs a three, and, doesn't shoot for the rest of the game. So I can really commend Giannis for having the confidence. But at the same time, I believe there are times where Giannis taking threes really should count as a turnover offensively because, most of the time it's, out of rhythm or it's a pull-up shot early in the shot clock, when the Bucks have numbers in transition. So like I said, the confidence to have to shoot it is great. But what's going to make him even tougher to stop is just who the Bucks have now compared to their roster 2 years ago. They have PJ Tucker. His jump shot's really ugly and he's unreliable at times offensively, but he's still a guy that you have to guard on the corner. Brook Lopez, we all know about Brook Lopez. It seems like the further away he is from the basket, the more lethal he is. Now you add in a guy like Drew Holiday and you replace Eric Bledsoe with. Really, the whole starting five for the Bucks, they can shoot the ball well from deep, basically shoot the ball well from all over the floor. And then once they get DiVincenzo back as well, who is a mid to high 30s 3-point shooter, that'll help. But that's really what it boils down to. Is the Bucks overall become much harder to defend, nonetheless Giannis. But now when you look at just how many pieces they have to spread the floor, Bobby Portis has emerged as an elite 3-point shooter this season. Bryn Forbes has been disappointing outside of that Miami series, but that's still a guy who you're going to have to guard. So just looking at the dynamics of the Bucks roster, we're going to make Giannis and the Bucks a lot harder to stop. I don't think you can really necessarily build a wall at this point. Obviously, if you have a guy like Kawhi, who is probably the best defender in basketball, that definitely can shut down Giannis one-on-one. But you're just looking at this roster construction. It's just comprised of guys who space the floor. Everyone who sees the floor for the Bucks can shoot.
Okay, fair enough. Just wanted to ask you on that. So I got just one more question here before we get more into the finals here. Mike Budenholzer was kind of on the hot seat after the playoffs last year. I thought he was going to be fired after last year. Do you think if they didn't make the finals this year, this was probably going to be his last year as the coach of Milwaukee?
Yeah, my opinion here, I believe Giannis getting hurt against the Heat kind of saved him a little bit. Like, okay, losing Giannis it's a good enough excuse. Okay, whatever. The bubble a lot of things went wrong. The Bucks were arguably the best team in basketball before the COVID stoppage, and then you have the 4-month layoff, and they come back. They just never looked like the same team. Yeah, really, what's been Budenholzer's Achilles heel, even throughout his coaching career, is really the lack of adjustments, or the adjustments will come when it's too late, where people are clamoring for adjustments after game 1, but adjustments aren't being made until after game 4 when you're down 3-1. So if you're asking me now, if they didn't make the finals this season, I would believe it's a safe bet that to assume that Budenholzer would have been gone. But this is tricky, because I can still see a situation where the Bucks win the finals, or they don't win the finals, and Budenholzer is gone regardless. But something that I have to tip my cap to him this season is his ability to adjust. Sometimes the adjustments have come too late, but he's adjusting. The last 2 years, we saw really the Bucks stick with their drop coverage defensively, which got them burned 2 seasons in the playoffs straight. This year, they finally acquired pieces, Drew Holiday and PJ Tucker, that they can switch. I believe Brook Lopez is also a very underrated defender, went on a guard as well. I believe he's slow, but he's fast. He's agile. And just seeing Budenholzer being able to take those adjustments, it's 2 years too late, but nonetheless better late than never. But I do believe that there could be a scenario where the Bucks win the finals, and Budenholzer, they mutually part ways, or Budenholzer wants to leave on a high note and just retire.
That would be interesting. You don't see that ever happen very often. Usually coach will get signed to a big extension or something like that if their contract's up, they win the finals. But that would be interesting. Yeah, I thought we go into Budenholzer's adjustments coming slow. I thought that was going to lose them their Atlanta series at some points, because you're thinking you see Trae Young torching their defense, and he's not changing anything. I thought that was maybe going to lose them that series.
No, that's a very valid point. And then after getting torched game 1 by Trae Young, they switched everything, and that really bothered Atlanta. And granted, Trae Young got hurt, and so did Giannis. So obviously, I would have loved to see both those teams healthy. I still believe that probably would have gone 6 or 7 games if both teams were healthy. But seeing it was like that feeler game. Game 1, they went with the drop, and they got burned by it. And then it was nice to see him come out game 2, switch everything. And I believe that's a game that they ended up winning by 40.
Yeah, they ended up getting some big games there against Atlanta. All right, so let's get a little bit more into the finals here. I just noticed on your Twitter that you and the other contributors to Milwaukee kind of tweeted out your picks for the finals. I noticed you had Suns in 6. Why is that?
Yeah, that's correct. Might not be too popular amongst the Brew Hoop writers and Bucks fans, but when you're looking at the Phoenix Suns, they just have so many ways to kill you. It seems like Jay Crowder always plays well against the Bucks, regardless of how he's played in the regular season or in prior playoff series. But it just seems like this is the year where a lot of stuff is going Phoenix's way, which is really what it comes down to more than anything, in my opinion, is luck. And Phoenix, don't get me wrong, Phoenix, fantastic basketball team, one of the most disciplined, if not the most disciplined teams of basketball. They rarely make mistakes. Monty Williams, one of the best stories in basketball, what he had to endure throughout his coaching career. Now he's coaching in the finals. I just thought that fate is on Phoenix's side. And really the last 2 seasons we've seen, whenever the Bucks and Suns matchup, which is only 2 times a year, so it's a small sample size, but man, they really know how to get at the Bucks. They move the ball around, tremendously well, as we've seen in these first 3 games. Even when the Bucks defend well, Phoenix is still zipping the ball around. Everyone is so unselfish, passing up a great shot for an even better shot. So I picked the Suns in 6 because we saw the Bucks win in Brooklyn. We've seen them win on the road in the first 3 matchups. But for me, Phoenix is a different animal. If you're looking at a historical perspective, the Bucks really have never fared well in the city of Phoenix. I believe at one point, this streak was snapped back, I think, in 2013 or 2014, that the Bucks had lost 22 straight. This is 22 years in a row in Phoenix. So historically speaking, city of Phoenix hasn't been too kind to them. And Phoenix, when they're at home, they played basketball at such an elite level. And the Bucks really on the road this season, they really weren't that great. They were fantastic at Fiserv Forum protecting their home floor, but they really stumbled on the road. And sometimes I believe the crowd does affect Giannis at the free throw line. That too, that doesn't help. But whenever you're at home, and at this point, Phoenix, they have home court, and
Yeah.
it's just big that the Bucks don't have home court. So they're probably gonna have to. They're gonna have to win Game 4 and Game 5 to steal home court and hopefully close it out in 6. But I mean, if you're having to play the Phoenix Suns in a Game 7 on the road, I'm not too optimistic about that.
Right. They had a big dominant win last game. It seems like this upcoming Game 4 here is really a big. I don't want to say it's kind of like a make it or break it game, but not necessarily, because you obviously have other chances to still win the series. But it seems like this is kind of like a must win situation for them, because you go down 3-1 if you don't, and then you got to win a couple games in Phoenix, and you don't really want to put yourself in that situation. So what do you think Milwaukee needs to do this upcoming game to make sure that they can build off that last win and tie this series up?
Right, of course. So my big problem here is we knew that the Bucks were going to come out in Game 3 and throw a punch. And granted, the Suns, they had that 36-30 lead in the second quarter where it looked like, okay, come on, like the Bucks, they got to start kicking it into gear soon, which they did. Great close to the second quarter into halftime, and they kept the momentum going for the rest of the game. But you knew the Bucks were going to come out in Game 3 with the punch. First finals home game in Milwaukee since 1974. So the crowd was super into it. The whole game had that riding too. But now the Phoenix Suns are going to make adjustments, and they're going to give you their best effort in Game 4 because they want to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy. They want to win it back in Phoenix. So you have to be prepared for Game 4 to get an early punch from Phoenix, and it's about how you respond. So you can't fold if the Suns, race out to an early double-digit lead. There's plenty of game left. You got to just stick with what's working, and I think something that they're going to need to do is they're going to need to continue to take away the corner three. I think if they can take away the corner three ball for Phoenix, which is what their bread and butter was this season, then you're going to start having the Suns start to shoot the ball really on the move, which is not their forte. We saw Jay Crowder hit some tough jumpers. Cam Johnson came alive in that third quarter too, when it looked like Phoenix was going to, maybe get over the hump. They cut it down to 4. But for me, the biggest thing for the Bucks is they're going to have to take care of the ball, because Phoenix, like I said, very, very well disciplined basketball team. They don't make mistakes. So take care of the ball, A, and B, just take away that corner three. That's what Phoenix loves to do. They want to get it to guys like Mikal Bridges in the corner. Can't leave guys open. We saw, like I said, two or three corner attempts from Phoenix the entire Game 3. That's just shows how well the Bucks defended, disciplined, scrambling, but in control. So I believe if the Bucks can minimize their turnovers offensively and, nullify the corner three from Phoenix, then you could be looking at a scenario where Game 5, it's all tied up 2-2 back in Phoenix.
Oh, I've been kind of hogging the mic, and I'll let you
no worries.
ask some questions here.
All right. So I kind of wanted to talk about a very polarizing player.
Sure.
And that's you either love him or you hate him. I know for me, I just got his jersey in the mail, and that's Chris Paul. So
Chris Paul.
I just want to know your thoughts on Chris Paul. I mean, just in general, like not even just from like the series standpoint, just throughout his career even.
I think Chris Paul is a fantastic point guard. He is called the point guard for a reason, and Chris Paul, he's a winning basketball player. He hasn't won a ring, but he knows what it takes to win. I believe the most frustrating thing about Chris Paul's game is his an admiration for flopping. I believe it's dangerous, especially when you're flopping. Chris Paul even 6 feet. We'll call him 6 feet, and you're just flopping like a fish out of water when Giannis comes down the floor and tries to gain post position. I believe that there's a difference between flopping and playing dangerous, and I believe when you're at that big of a height disadvantage, when you have a guy like Giannis coming down the floor and like he barely touches you, and you're like, flailing your arms like that, falling to the floor, and Giannis is falling over you. I believe that's what's the most frustrating about Chris Paul is just his antics, really, about drawing the foul and all that. I believe it's dangerous, but overall, Chris Paul, I would love to have him on the Bucks. I believe there was some conversation that Chris Paul Milwaukee was one of his preferred destinations. It didn't work out, and the Bucks have Drew Holiday, which is pretty good consolation prize if you ask me. But overall, Chris Paul, he knows what it takes to win. One of the best passers for sure in basketball. He's just also some of these shots he was hitting in game 3 too. There was this, I believe it was the third quarter, where Chris Paul like had this humongous like high arcing shot over the outstretched arm of Giannis, and he got fouled from behind on a rear contest from Pat Connaughton too. So Chris Paul, he's very, very, very savvy guy. You hate to play against him, but you love if he's on your team.
And Owen's a OKC fan too, so he misses them on OKC.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I understand the tank, but yeah, loved having him on OKC.
I'm sure he did a lot of good things for that young roster at OKC for sure. But I'm really excited to see what OKC's young core will look like. Maybe they'll trade some of their draft picks for sure. But Shai is he one of the most electric, more fun players to watch in basketball for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's Canadian too.
There you go.
Just to toughen, yeah.
To
And
toot your
I
guys'
know-
horn.
I wanted to ask that because when we interviewed John last week, the Phoenix Suns writer, he said he did not like Chris Paul until he was on Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
And then he became a Chris Paul fan.
That's exactly. Yeah, you love him on your team, but you hate to play against him. You absolutely hate to play against Chris Paul because you know what you're gonna get. He's gonna give you the antics on the flopping, but then he's gonna hit some of these crazy mid-range shots and make some crazy passes that really no other point guard could make.
Yeah.
So excuse me. So if let's say the Bucks come out here and win the next game, do you think that the Bucks can go ahead and win in 6 games, or do you think that it's going to take 7 for them to win this series?
That's tough. I do believe the Bucks are actually going to win Game 4. The Bucks, they know how to play on their home court. Their role players play much better at home. You can say that for pretty much any team. But really, Kris Middleton and Drew Holiday, they really step it up at home, which gives me another level of confidence that the Bucks will come away with Game 4. But I'm going to stick to my guns here. I still believe Phoenix has it in 6. Granted, the Bucks really had a lot of opportunities in Games 1 and Games 2 to win. Yet, Game 1, you don't really get anything from Drew Holiday, which hurts. Giannis is, still feeling it out from his knee, plays well in his minutes. And Game 2 was just, you have a great performance from Giannis, who scores 20 in the third quarter. And all you really needed was a somewhat decent game from Kris Middleton and Drew Holiday on the road. That didn't happen. Plus, to add insult to injury, Pat Connaughton scored 14 points in Game 2 on the road. So if Pat Connaughton is giving you 14 points in an NBA Finals game, like that's a game that you really don't have any excuse to lose. So really, what it boils down to for the Bucks here is you can't squander these sort of opportunities, and I believe this is something that could come back to bite them.
Okay, and we asked John a similar question, but do you have like a favorite Bucks memory, and as well, do you have a favorite Bucks all-time player?
Yeah, so my favorite memory, really one of my favorite Bucks team, if not my favorite Bucks team, was the 2009-2010 Fear the Deer Bucks team. I was in 8th grade in middle school, and I just remember I loved Brandon Jennings and the swagger he played with on the floor. At the time, Milwaukee really didn't have a personality like that, so I thought it was great for the city to have someone like Jennings. He scored 55 points, and I believe that was his 7th game of his career, which was nuts. I eventually think that him scoring 55 points was probably the worst thing to happen in his career because you're only so high, you know what I mean? But also, you had Andrew Bogut playing at a first team, all defensive level. And then, of course, it was against the Suns. Ironically, he goes down in April with just a gruesome elbow dislocation injury. And then, they traded for John Salmons, which is what they needed at the All-Star break. They needed another scorer because the 2009-2010 Bucks team, it was all defense. It was holding opponents to 80 points, rarely hitting 90, lower 90s. So they were all about the defensive end, but it was a question of, can the Bucks score more than 80, to have a chance to win? And then they swing this trade for John Salmons, who just turned into an all-star for that half season. And just watching that whole team come together, you have Salmons, Jennings, and Bogut before the injury playing at a super high level. I just thought that was so much fun to watch, especially me, being in 8th grade, it's really, when my basketball interest has always been very high, but it really, I want to say it peaked for that 2009, 2010 Bucks team. And granted, who knows what would have happened if Andrew Bogut stayed healthy that year, but that was really granted, this injury was not his fault at all, but it really was the story of Bogut's career was, staying off the injured list, which wasn't the case. But yeah, that 2009, 2010 Bucks team definitely holds a special place in my heart for sure.
I thought Brandon Jennings was going to be legit. Like I thought he was going to be one of the better point guards in the league. He looked amazing back then.
But it's okay. I would like to think that Brandon Jennings helped change the culture surrounding Milwaukee and basketball as a whole.
Okay. And was he your favorite player all time, or did you? Okay.
Yeah. Him and Michael Redd, absolutely. Michael Redd was so much fun to watch. I love that left-handed stroke. He's just like I said earlier, he's a walking bucket. Really can score on anyone. Can't give him any space. Such a quick release, and also just that swagger that Brandon Jennings played with, coming from Linwood, California to Milwaukee. Coming to the small city of Milwaukee. It's, I like to think that, Brandon Jennings died so the Bucks could live.
Fair enough. And as a Raptors fan, I know we went through a lot of pain, like early on, like way back, especially in those 2000s part. And I remember like in 2000, I think it was the 2007, 2008 season was the first time they made the playoffs in years. And I remember playing Milwaukee that year, and for some reason, Milwaukee there was so many games I think that went to either overtime or close to overtime against Milwaukee that year. And that was an interesting season because like the Raptors basically just had Chris Bosh and Andre Bargnani were probably our leading scorers that season.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bucks, they gave us a lot of grief that year for some reason.
Yeah, well, here we are now. You guys have that championship ring to brag about, and hopefully the Bucks are next.
Yeah, you guys are right there. You just gotta
get over.
Gotta take it here, yeah.
Right.
Well, you guys are in good shape still. Like I thought, if they didn't win that game 3, obviously it's tough to come back, but you guys are still in good shape.
So we'll see plenty of basketball left.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I ask Andrew our biggest and final question here, you got anything else to ask him before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we have one question here we ask all of our interviewees here. So our football podcast is very pro this, and Owen and I are not, so we always ask our interviews. So do you put ketchup on, you eat macaroni and cheese, right? Obviously you eat, right?
Yes.
Do you put ketchup on your macaroni and cheese?
I will tell you one thing that everyone knows about me is, if there's one thing I can just not stand on this earth, it's ketchup. Yes. Ever since a young age, ketchup. You put a bottle of ketchup in front of me and I like gag. I've never eaten ketchup. I just think the taste way too sweet. So if ketchup was the last thing on earth, I would starve. I wouldn't care to eat it. That's how strongly I despise ketchup. So I think that might answer your question.
I think from all of our podcast guests, we have kind of a list make, and it's way more against it than for it. So I'm glad to hear me and Owen are very against it. And Steve, our host of our football podcast, he will go to his grave with that, saying that ketchup belongs on macaroni and cheese. So
he might want to reevaluate his life choices after that one.
I mean, like ketchup is not like it. Very few foods do I like ketchup on, but I definitely understand like the not liking ketchup at all. Like
I don't.
Yeah, you like what you like.
Yeah, I don't put it on anything either, so I'm with you there.
There we go.
Yeah. What last week when John was on, he was saying that he doesn't put it on, obviously, but he's also he works his job. He's like a food and beverage host, and he said that they have macaroni and cheese on the menu. He said nobody ever requests ketchup to be put on it either. He said there's a lot of Canadians that come through there too, and
he's never even heard of it.
Yeah. He said there are a lot of Canadians ask for poutine there, though. I don't know. Have you ever had poutine yourself?
Yeah, we have poutine out here in Arizona, but it's definitely not, authentic. That's for sure. I'm still waiting to have my first bite of legit poutine.
Well, you got to come to Canada to do that. Then you can maybe make from Milwaukee. It's not too far of a flight to get over the border from.
Yeah, I'd love to. I actually have
If you go that way.
family in Montreal, so hopefully soon I can make it out.
Nice, yeah. Phoenix isn't too far of a trip either. It's actually, I think
They
it's
have
only like a
direct
couple
flights.
hour flights or
Yeah,
something like that.
easy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Andrew, a lot, and hopefully this series comes interesting, and maybe it'll be tied 2-2 by next game here, and maybe we'll have you back on, and we can say that the Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Wouldn't that be nice? But again, I appreciate you gentlemen having me on your show. It was great talking basketball with you guys.
Yeah.
And where can the listeners find you on social media, or if you want to promote anything else,
Yeah,
website or anything,
absolutely.
where can they find you?
So you can find my stuff on brewhoop.com. That's the SB Nation site for the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm on Twitter at Andrew _NBA.
All right, guys. Well, make sure, all the listeners, if you haven't already, go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the Amateur Agency. And as always, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.